Well, welcome everyone. Great smiling faces. What I'd like to do is just kind of gauge the energy in the room. So let's go around, just say your first name. And what I'd like you to do is, in one word, tell me how you felt when you walked into the room. What was the feeling you got when you entered the room? Just one word.
Only one word?
One word. Make it easy. Let's start on the court. Yes.
All right.
First name and how you felt.
Okay, Angie, and I feel friendly.
Okay.
Nan,
Nan.
I feel it's a small room.
You feel it's what?
Small room.
Small.
Smaller than
Okay.
Lo Mei, feel warm.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Lo Mei, I feel warm.
Okay.
Alexandra, I felt like empty because that was the earlier I was like nobody. I was like, okay. Just
Okay.
Yeah, Betty, and I think warm, also the word.
Okay, great.
Ping, I felt friendly.
Okay.
以前，就是 woman, what I impressed me a lot.
Okay. Okay. Let's go back here.
Sherry, I feel comfortable because I work here.
Okay.
Taxi, I feel surprising because we didn't emphasize this Women's Day on our invitation, but it came out like our female friends are so enthusiastic about it tonight.
Great.
I feel changed. I feel lovely.
Great. Okay.
I'm Karen, and I was kind of excited because this is like my first like event after I joined CPCC, so yeah.
Fabulous.
Yes. I feel honored to have so many guests coming.
Funny, exciting too. I've been here a couple times before, but this is the first time this year, so good to see like all the
Good.
Faye, I feel cozy here.
Oh,
It's very
great.
comfortable for me to
Good
be
word.
sitting here and listening to everyone.
Okay.
I feel statistically outnumbered.
You got my line already, so I'm gonna say I feel warm. Ocean, I feel
Ocean, what's your one word?
warm.
Warm. Great.
just happy. There's food.
Give us your first name.
Oh, I'm Hao Ting.
I'm Jessica, and I feel excited. I'm Amber. I felt really curious because it's my first time walking into this building.
Great, great. So what I'm going to do to kick this off this morning is I'm going to tell you my story because, as you can see from my gray hair, I've had a long career that's taken many twists and turns. And as I go through my story, I want you to listen for certain things as I go through my story, because one of the important things that I think you need to be really good at, and I'll pick out 3 things that I think you should take away, but one of the kind of side things is becoming a really good storyteller, because people remember you when you tell your story. So to the extent you can refine your story, people will remember you. And that's really important when you're looking to make a career change or even to influence people where you currently work. So a long time ago, I started my career as an elementary school teacher. I taught 6th grade. I was a brand new teacher on a Friday, and on a Monday, I was a real teacher. The superintendent hired me, and I got a class of 6th grade students who could not read. They had been passed along, and this was in the mountains in western Pennsylvania. And I'm a coal miner's daughter, so I grew up in a very poor area. So I taught them to read by looking at the magazines that they carried with them. All the other teachers would confiscate the magazines. And what I did, I said, put them on the desk, and we started to learn to read by looking at captions under pictures. Okay? And then eventually we started to read headlines. And then we started to read the sports headlines in the paper. And then, because most of these children were going to be of driving age in a couple of years. So I knew they were all looking forward to learning to drive. So we brought in a driver's license application and we learned to read. And in a couple of months, they were reading. So my takeaway from that experience really formed the foundation for the whole rest of my career. And my takeaways were, you can't take anyone any place unless you start where they are. Very much like GPS, you plug in where you want to go, and GPS comes back and says, what's your current location? Where are you now? And that has really serviced me throughout my career. So whenever I want to influence anyone, whether I want to convince anyone that they should hire me, whether I'm in a store and I need to convince a salesperson that he or she should do this for me, you have to start from where they are, not where you are. So that's to me was one of my big takeaways. The other takeaway that was really significant is learning is a two-way street. It's a dialogue. It's a back and forth. So to me, there's a difference between people who know it all and people who learn it all. And I like to think of myself as a person who learns rather than. So that was my first career. Just before, I was only teaching for a couple of months, and then I had an opportunity to go back to school on a fellowship that was, I was nominated by a teacher, by a biology teacher, not a chemistry teacher, biology teacher, and I didn't even know. And all of a sudden I had a full fellowship, whole way was paid, including my living expenses. So I'm back to school for a master's in psychology. From there, I spent about a year working for the Department of Education, doing research on a book that was titled Change Agents in School Hierarchies. How do you identify people that are the changers, that make things happen? From there, that only lasted a year. That was in Syracuse. And this is a little sidelight. I met this guy in a bar when I was in Syracuse. I really liked him. He was a third-year law student. He was graduating, and he had a job in New York. So when my job finished, I said, well, what am I going to do? I think I'm going to go to New York. So I followed him to New York. I just needed a job, right? So I didn't know where to look. I'd never been to New York. So I called my professor. I went to school at Bucknell for my graduate work. And he made one phone call, and I had a job at McGraw-Hill. That's the first time I understood what networking was all about. So I was kind of a late learner to understand the power of networking. So I got a job. I was in the publishing world for about 7 years, working for McGraw-Hill and Random House. In the meantime, they moved me from the editorial side, to the product side, to the sales side. So I didn't know what a product manager was, so the way I learned my MO at the time was to go back to school. So I went back and I got my MBA at night, which took a long time. And while I was finishing my program at NYU, I answered an ad in the New York Times, and I got a job with the largest fabricator of gold chain in the world, headquartered out of a little town in Italy called Arezzo. And I think at the time I was probably 25, and part of that job involved flying to Italy once a quarter. So I'd fly over to Italy, land in Rome, rent my little Fiat, and drive up to Firenze, to Florence, and commute from the hotel to the factory, to the gold factory where they made all this gold chain. It was wonderful. So I learned a little bit about cultural differences and how to communicate. I have a side story here, a little side story as well. The owners of this company, they were private owners. It wasn't a public company, Mr. Gori and Mr. Zucchi. And every time I went for 2 weeks, and nothing happened. Nothing was accomplished until the very last day when I was on my way to the airport. Then all the decisions were made. And in this one meeting, I was totally flabbergasted. The two partners, the two owners, started speaking Italian, and I had no clue what they were saying. I think they were telling jokes because there was a lot of laughing. And I said, you know, I'm never going to let that happen again. So the next trip I went, I learned enough Italian, not conversational, but certainly I could understand what they were saying. And they did the exact same thing, and they were telling not only a joke, but a dirty joke. And when they realized I knew what they were saying, they were totally embarrassed, and I had total control at that point in time. So when you want to influence someone, you need to start where they are. So I started where they were, and I took it to the next step. From there, I started my own little consulting practice. I did that for about 2 years, and I traveled from East Coast to West Coast, and I got burned out. So I took a job with my biggest client on the East Coast, because the guy that I picked up in the bar was now my husband. So I took a job with the biggest client. They were in the software business. So I ended up running a couple of small software companies, small to mid-sized software companies, until I hit a glass ceiling and could no longer move. Couldn't find a job in New York. We just hit a glass ceiling. So my husband said to me, "Why don't you retire?" I said, "Geez, I never thought of that." So I played tennis for 2 weeks, and I said, "Oh, this is just not for me. This is not stimulating enough for me." So I went back, talked to some people, and a good friend of mine said, "Why don't you think about commercial real estate? Because you understand business, it gives you a lot of flexibility, and you know, it's just something you might like." So I got licensed, got a job, and meanwhile, 20 years later, and a number of firms in between to experience different cultures, I'm at Newmark. And most recently, I was chief of staff to the CEO. So I started out as a broker. In the commercial real estate world, there's no real upward mobility. You just get bigger titles because you make more money. So there's typically no level of responsibility tied to title. And a lot of places are like that. And some people like to have that title. To some people that's meaningful, and others it isn't. Some people are driven by money, and some people are not. So after quite a stint in the commercial brokerage world, in a very male-dominated world, I decided that I needed a change. So that's where I am right now. I'm working with a group of 2 other people. We're starting a new financial services company. So I'm in startup mode, I'm in go mode. I'm still working part-time in the commercial real estate business while I'm winding down some opportunities, because I didn't want to leave any money on the table. So I negotiated a relationship that allowed me to benefit and still give me time to pursue my new adventure. And if you ask me what I do, I would tell you I help people become more aware of their blind spots when they're making decisions. We all have them. So I see my role as helping people to be aware of maybe what they don't know, because you don't know what you don't know until someone helps you to figure that out or enlightens you. So that's basically what I've done in the commercial real estate world, where I help companies understand what they don't know about making incredibly large financial decisions about where they're going to operate their business from, to now where I'm going to help people understand where their blind spots are in investing. And that's something that I think that's another topic that I'm going to suggest Candace consider for Lunch and Learn, and that's finance. How women should be relating, specifically women, but men can certainly benefit from that too. What your relationship with money and investing is, because most of you, well, actually we have a variety of people in different stages of their career. It's never too early to start thinking about that. And I think that would be a wonderful topic too. So, 3 points that I want to make as we go around the table, because I'm going to ask some of you to kind of tell me your story too, so we can all hear. So, the first thing that I would suggest is you become an expert in something. Something. Whether it's what you went to school for, whether it's chemistry, whether it's, I don't know, journalism, whatever, banking, commercial real estate, debts, what
Kind of banking, financing.
banking and finance. So become an expert. So that means you have what we call domain expertise or subject matter expertise, okay? But there's another very important part of that called skills. So there's expertise and there's skills. So can anybody tell me what a skill is? Come on, you all have skills.
Speaking Mandarin.
Okay. That could
feel like
be,
they all know it better
that
than
could
me.
be an expertise too.
Right.
So-
Management,
Time management. What else? What do we all do?
communication.
Communication,
Leadership.
leadership. How many know how to sell? How many of you know how to influence decisions? I'm not talking just at work, I'm talking at home. So once you start understanding the difference between a skill and subject matter, it's really crucial because the subject matter is going to change. Just think of our world of technology. The subject matter is going to be very different 5 years from now. So those of you who stick with subject matter could be obsolete. But if you focus on your skills, selling, influencing, negotiating, all those good things, and you figure out how to repackage those skills, you give yourself a lot more flexibility. And those skills will enable you to move from one subject matter area to another. Okay? So you heard in my story, I started out as a teacher, went back to school and went into publishing. So I was transferring those skills. And you remember what I told you my biggest learning takeaway was? I used that through my whole career. And I used that as really the basis for jumping into new areas and learning them, packaging the skill sets, taking the subject matter expertise and moving it along. So if you start thinking about today what your areas of expertise are, and if you don't have any, maybe that's a goal, maybe that's something you need to think about. Hopefully it's something that you're passionate about. And then the skills that go with it. Okay, so that would be my first recommendation in terms of becoming more aware of what you need to do to move forward in a career. Okay? Second thing, if you don't have it, you need to get it, and that's curiosity. So curiosity to me is the end product of one of the greatest tools in my toolbox, and that's questions. Because I am naturally curious, I love to learn about people and ask questions. And what I've learned also is that people judge you by the questions that you ask and how you make them feel. And that's one of the reasons I asked you how you felt when you walked into this room. Because it's important to understand how you feel and how people feel when they interact with you. So to me, questions are wonderful, wonderful. And that's a learning style for me. So think about that the next time you're networking. Ask the question. Everybody says, what do you do? Right? That's usually the first question. But take it further and say, well, tell me about that. What does a typical day look like for you? What do you like about what you do? If you could change something about what you do, what would it be? Would you be at a different company? Would you be doing something different? And that brings them out, and they remember you because you care and you're curious. So to me, that's a wonderful networking tool, and that might just get you into a situation that you really love. You say, wow, I would have never known that unless I asked a question, because that person might be able to guide you. So that would be my second tip. And thirdly, you need to become a storyteller in a way that you can elongate your story or shorten your story given the circumstances. So I can tell my story in an elevator ride up or down, or I can tell my story to a group who's so willing to listen, and almost everything in between. And that's because I practice. So when you're networking, practice that. Practice telling your story. And you all come from cultures that are so rich. I want to know about those cultures. I want to know how women are perceived in that culture. I want to hear your stories, because that's really interesting to me, and that's going to help me remember who you are. You all need to do the same kind of thing. So with that, I'm going to open it up and ask for someone to volunteer to tell me their story. Why are you here? I don't know. Who wants to tell me why they're here? Other than the CGCC. Betty, why are you here?
Curiosity.
Okay.
Mainly, I like to learn things, new things.
Okay.
I'm always excited when there are new things for me to learn. But of course, I knew that everybody's going to be younger here, and also because they are developing the career from the theme that you have set up. But I still like to find out and learn new things. I believe that you can learn new things from anyone. And in a Chinese saying, when there are three people, you can always find a teacher among them.
Ah,
So
interesting.
that is why I always love to go into a new environment and learn and listen. And to hear your story teaches me a lot already. I'm sure I'll be learning from other people.
Okay.
So that's one of it. And because I'm in administration and human resources,
Okay.
I feel that it could help me to help others as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in human resources?
Yes, administration, business administration.
Business administration.
Basically, I do a whole lot in the office, because we don't have many people in the office, like about 20 people.
So you wear a lot of hats.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
How did you get to where you are today?
Oh, that's a long story. I did a whole lot of things too. I studied in England, and I
Okay.
moved back to Hong Kong, and then.
Did you study human resources in England?
No, actually, business administration.
Okay.
So that was something
That's
I
my
just
point.
picked up.
What we start out thinking our career path is going to be
That
may
was a
not
good
end
question.
up that way, because we have choices along the way.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, and you're a result of all the choices that you make. And even though you might think that you're going to be here one day doing this, something along the path, like picking up a guy in a bar, might move you off your course, and then you make a choice. Do I go this way or do I go that way? So let's hear some more about where you went next.
Okay. I came here preparing to listen. I didn't know that I had to show up. So then I worked in Hong Kong. I was in different fields, like I was in airlines.
Okay.
I was in hotels. All the hospitality industry I enjoyed. But also in those different companies, different fields, I also changed, like from finance to development of the hotels, to customer service, to later on to human resources, and now I also wear the hat of finance. So it's not something I foresee that would happen. It just went developed by itself.
But you made choices along the way.
I guess I did.
We all do.
Yes.
Sometimes those choices are very subtle,
Mhm.
but we definitely make them. You all made a choice to get out of bed this morning and come in. So we all make little choices every day. Sometimes they're bigger choices than others. Nan, I'm really curious. Would you tell us your story?
Hi everyone, my name is Nan, and I currently work from in HSBC Bank, commercial banking segment.
in China for like almost 30 years, and then I come to U.S. because of my husband.
By the way, your English is very good.
Thank you. I'm still troubled with my English. I cannot get all of I heard, so that's something that I need to improve. I used to run biochemistry. I changed my career.
What did you do in biochemistry? What was your role?
Basically, I just have my master's degree regarding biochemistry, but when my mentor asked me to change to PhD, I don't want to do it anymore. So.
Was it because you decided you didn't like it, or
yeah, I
was
don't want to do just spending all my time working in doing experiment and publishing
Okay.
paper.
So like me, it took you a little while to learn about yourself and what felt good, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
It took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, because the issue is that I'm curious so many things. I feel like it's as long as it has fun, I don't mind to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then come to US, I was a housewife for like 2 years, and I have not having my baby at that time, and but I feel like I was segment, just how to say, no social.
Right.
Yeah, no social at that time, so I don't know how to do it anymore. And then I went to MBA program in Buffalo, graduated there, and got my job.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what your job is today.
I work in international subsidiary banking, so basically provide corporate banking solutions to the multinational companies. So the companies we serve is just they have foreign parents
Okay.
around the world, but
Okay.
we work just for the U.S. subs.
Okay, great. And now instead of working in a lab, you're working in a people laboratory,
Yeah,
right? Okay, great. So where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, that's it. That's one of the reasons I come in. Because basically, I think I like the job, but in the meantime, there are many. In this big bank, there are many administration work, the process thing that I don't like. But I used to be a relationship manager when I was in China Construction Bank, so I really like working with people and helping them with their financial decision. So.
All right, so you've got some good subject matter expertise and a lot of people skills, so you can repackage that in many, many different ways.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I don't mind to learn more about other areas.
And how do you think you would learn about other areas? How do you think you would engage in that learning process?
I think the basic thing is that communication is really important. That when you know how to communicate with people and what's the issue regarding this problem, it's easy to find out a way to solve it. 'Cause no matter what you do, it's basically the same.
So I have my partner in my new adventure left her role at Cantor Fitzgerald, which is a large financial services company. And she negotiated a very generous exit that gave her time to think about what she wanted to do next. And what she did over the course of a year is she had 800 coffees with people. 800. And the way she set up the coffees is she wanted to have coffee with someone that liked their job. That was the only criteria. And she found that after going through all these people, there were probably 20, only 20, that liked their job. And she went on to find out why they liked their job. So I'm going to throw that out to you. Talk to people. If you admire someone, go up and ask them, would you have coffee with me? I'd like to hear your story. I'd like to know how you got to where you are. And if you really listen, you get a lot of clarity that way. And in many cases, it's very motivating. So think about that as one way to learn about different opportunities outside of your world. Okay? So maybe banking, even though you've got banking experience, maybe you can package your subject matter expertise with your skills and deploy them someplace else. I don't know. But if you go through the process of talking to people that are out there, it's really amazing what you can learn. And it also presents you with an opportunity for choice. And you never know when you're going to run into someone that's going to say, hey, I have something that you would be a perfect fit for. And then you have a choice.
Yeah, I agree.
Jessica, tell us your story.
Sure. So I'm currently at Cushman and Wakefield. I'm in their capital markets group, but I also didn't get into commercial real estate right away. It's also very inspiring to hear that you had so many, different starts, because my biggest thing was I'm like, oh, I wish I got into this industry earlier, because I look at some of my colleagues, and I've been in it for 5 years, but I was in Deutsche Bank doing banking before. I really didn't like banking. It was very top heavy when I graduated too, but it was I was just happy that I had a job in 2008, 2009.
We all have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I'm here now, and I actually really love what I do, and my focus, as I was telling you in the beginning of our conversation, is I focus on international Chinese placement of Chinese capital overseas to the U.S. And I was also kind of pushed in that direction because I'm the only Chinese person in the firm who speaks Mandarin to some degree.
Yes.
And then my executive was like, Jessica, come with me on this trip. And I was like, no. I can't do that. Because everything, when I talk about business, all the business jargon is in English. Like, I have no idea how to say IRR, leverage, or anything like that. It's very technical. But luckily, all of the Chinese people know that language in English. So, but when I was there, it was still very helpful to be communicating at a basic level, conversationally in Mandarin, and she saw this synergy right away. And that was my executive. She was like, you need to do this, so she pushed me in that direction.
So how did you get from banking to real estate?
Completely by accident. It was, so I was in banking at Deutsche Bank for like 4 years. I just really wanted to change, and I wanted to really drive my own business. It was the first place I interviewed with. It was efinancialcareers.com. I don't even know if that website is existing or online anymore. And I applied, and every round of interview, I just loved the firm, and I liked the immediate group a lot.
Okay.
And they were like, you're not going to get a salary. You're going to drive your own business, though, and make all of your own decisions. And I was like, sounds good.
Is that true today? Did you do that?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I have my own team. I have a partner now, thank goodness, and I have an analyst. It took a while to get here, though. It was definitely very challenging leaving a banking salary. But it was like, I can't be here. I mean, I know some people, it's not the firm at all. It's more of like, it was very top heavy when I was there, and I was reporting directly to an MD, and I did everything, and it was a lot. So
I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your takeaway from this conversation so far?
I really like that everybody seems to be jumping around, not jumping around so much, but it's not like your first career is the end all be all. That was one of my biggest struggles when I first started. I was like, if I did this earlier, if I had a 5-year head start on this, I'd be here, or, and relearning the industry. Like, I totally agree with the skills that you're talking about, which is sales, or, at least maybe financing is some of the technical background, but I had to relearn an entire industry, where everything is in New York City and nationally. So, but it's
now
very...
Now you're an expert.
Yeah, okay. Not yet. It's heartening to know you can start over, so it's good to know.
Okay, as Jessica was talking, a thought came to mind. When you are interviewing, if you're in a position where you're looking for a job or you're interviewing and you are asked a question, instead of answering yes or no, answer it with a storyline, like Jessica did, okay? She answered with a story, and she communicated her subject matter expertise as well as her skill set. And she answered the question, but she answered it with a story. It's a quick story. Story can be a sentence. Okay? Let's go over to CGCC. Let's see. Who can we ask? Why don't we we go to the male side? Yeah, let's see.
Well, I just graduated last year.
Okay.
Uh,
What was your field of study?
I studied electrical engineering and computer science.
Okay, good areas. I'm interested.
I'm very interested in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And I was gonna do my own startup last year, but there's some unexpected obstacles.
Okay.
And then so looking for somewhere like I can do something similar like startups. And then one of my classmates introduced me here to CDCC. And then I started to do internship at CDCC, and then I feel like, oh, this is where I want to do.
All right.
Very startup like culture, and really love here, so I work here. And right now I'm doing the tech stuff at CDCC.
Tax stuff?
Yeah, like website.
Oh, tech stuff. Okay, got it. Okay.
And it's kind of like building my own products.
Okay.
And, yeah, it's a pretty short story.
So do you manage the help desk? Is that what you do? You help people who have problems, or are you more on the background? Okay.
Coding.
Coding. Okay, you're a coder. Okay. And you think you found a really great spot for you at this point in your life? Okay. Let's check on somebody who came in that we haven't heard from. In the back. The corner, that person I can't see. Oh, you've got your mouth full, I'm sorry. Let's go to the other end, the gentleman on the end. Could you tell us your name and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Nick. I'm part of the HSBC, so I have a colleague here.
Okay.
I'm joined this, just curious to see what your view towards the path and the career development. So my story is, if I start from work, started with HSBC in China in 2008.
Okay.
Really glad to have a job at that time. And then had an opportunity to work in London on a secondment. So I signed up for it because it was great exposure to be able to work in London, kind of the headquarters.
So you were anxious, you were curious about learning about how it was like to work in another culture? Or
it's a different role, different culture,
Different role, okay.
different place, of course. So kind of signed up to it. It was a 2 years term.
Okay.
After that, I learned a little bit more about the bank has a more international rotation program,
Okay.
which is again I signed up for that. Very fortunate to be on the program now, and this is my first role as part of the program, which landed me the job here in New York. So
Okay.
what I do here is sales and business development, basically salesperson for our custody team for HSBC.
And you're liking this role?
So far so good.
So far so good?
Can't complain being a big apple. But about liking, to be honest, I really like in terms of, okay, we win deals, we make business and customers happy, but sometimes I have been asked this question like, what do you like to do? Because you mentioned some people do love their job. If you ask me, is that my motivation waking up every morning to come here?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Oh,
but,
okay.
The salary pays for the family and everything, and I like what I do, but it's not in passion. So
Okay.
I'm curious what.
Do you know what your passion is?
I don't know. I'm
Okay.
still trying to figure that out.
You know, we're all there, and you bring up an excellent point, because as you move through life, you change. So your passion changes too, because the people that you come in contact with, and the other thing that changes is your risk profile. Okay, so when you were willing to take that job in London and then come to New York, and all of a sudden now, you know, you have a different set of responsibilities, so your appetite for risk is different.
Yeah.
And that changes for us as we go through our career. Okay, Nan's appetite for risk is different because she's got a family, she's got a baby that she's got to keep in mind. So, you know, her choices are influenced by your risk profile or the context that you're in at any given time. So when you're aware of that, that comes into play with your choice, because risk and choice pretty much go hand in hand. So you're in a place right now where you're less tolerant to risk, at least for the moment. But I think it's really difficult if you look back over your career and say, what really turned me on about that job? What was it about my day-to-day that I really liked? And if you say nothing, then you definitely were in the wrong place. But there usually is one little thing. Say, wow, that felt good. So it's part of that is being self-aware and saying, when you go into a meeting and you walk out and say, wow, that was a great meeting. Why was it a great meeting? How did it make me feel? What did I learn about myself in that meeting? Was it because people listened to my ideas? Or I was able to brainstorm and collectively we came up with a good... So there are things, little bits of information that you learn about yourself if you pay attention. Okay? That's something that's really hard to do. It was really hard for me to do that for a long, long time. And once I started thinking about that, I would say, okay, why am I feeling this way? And after peeling the onion back, and it doesn't happen overnight, I said, I just realized my values are not aligned with the company values. Not that one's right or wrong, it's just we're not a fit anymore because my values are here and they're here. So I have a choice. So I went to a place where my values were more aligned. But you really don't understand even what your values are until you're challenged or until you pay attention to that. So I think that's the first step in figuring out how to take the next step in a career that you feel is successful for you. And that's another thing. It's your definition of success, not someone else's. Okay, let's do one more. This young lady here.
I was mistakenly placing two. I'm not a member of CCC, but I'm familiar with most of them. So.
Well, we'll listen to you anyway.
I was recently, I was actually in event services, and before that I was in public service.
What is event services?
I mean, an event decorator, like
Okay.
Decorating mainly with flowers, but we work with like many other materials too. So
Okay.
it's my first job that I don't have to sit behind the screen all the time. So that
Okay.
was one of my motivation to take this job. But before that, I was completely an office person. So I've been in that industry for a little bit over a year. I'm thinking about changing my career too.
Okay.
So that's my motivation to come here, and it's very good to hear your stories. But before that, I worked in public service. I was mainly, I was with the City of New York. I was doing capital budgeting and stuff like this.
Oh,
So
really?
it's
Oh,
completely
that's a big
different.
change. Capital budgeting to making rooms feel good because of the flowers you put in, right?
Sort of, yeah. It's more like there's similarity in between jobs because the event service group that I was working for was, my responsibility was like project management. So it's not only about designing, it's about putting things together. So there's a business side, you have to reach out to the clients, you have to do sales too sometimes.
Okay.
And you work with the design team to come up with ideas to make your client feel happy. And also to execute that plan is also a big part of the job.
So do you like project management?
Sort of. But I don't think that's my area of expertise. Although I like it, but that's not something that I.
What do you like? What do you really like?
I think the previous job also excited me a lot because.
Don't think about jobs. Think about.
Like analyzing things, like figuring out.
Okay.
Logics between things and working on a solution. I think I'm better on that side.
Okay.
So.
But you don't like doing that in front of a screen all day long?
I'm not totally against it.
Okay.
It's just I wanted to try something else. It's not like I dislike
Oh,
my current
okay.
job.
So you're willing to take a little bit of a risk here. I like that. Okay. So where are you headed? How are you approaching your process?
Any process.
You said you're thinking about a career change. How are you going about the process of finding the next adventure?
Talk to people,
Okay.
to know what I don't know.
Good. So you got a little takeaway from today.
Right.
What have you been doing so far? Or are you just starting out on this?
I'm just starting.
Okay.
I just came back from a long break.
Okay.
Yeah, I just set my foot in New York last week.
Okay. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay. So, if anyone has anything to share, this is the time to do it.
I think Anping or Anita, you guys should share your story.
Oh, come on,
Well,
let's do
my
it.
story cannot be inspiring because I grew up in China. When I started my first job, I had no choice. The government said, you do this. That's
Okay,
it.
okay.
That's it. So you don't have any choice. But anyway.
You could have disagreed and then suffered the consequences, right?
I know. So I had no choice to just take it. So, well, I grew up in China, in Beijing, and by accident, I learned French in high school. It was no choice. I had no choice. They say no English teacher this year. You learn French. I say okay, you learn French. So afterward, I went to countryside. So like a lot of young people after high school, you went to countryside for farming. So I'm sorry.
Great education.
Yeah, that's true. After that, I went to the Cultural Revolution ended, so I went back to. I succeeded to pass the exam. I went to university. After that, I went back to work. Of course, it's assigned work, so I had to accept it. Then I didn't like it. Then I said, oh, there's opportunity to go to master degree. So I took French literature as a major. I went to master degree. 85, China started to allow citizens to have passport go foreign countries. So I applied for passport. I went to France.
Of course.
So I went to spent 4 years in France. I learned. I did a master degree there, and I went to. In the same time, I worked at the OECD, the international organization there. So I married. I went to Japan because my French husband, was a journalist. So I followed him to Japan. I couldn't find a better job because I was at a spouse status. I couldn't work. So then I find out I learned some Japanese. Then I found a business school who needs some French teachers. I told Japanese, French. Can you imagine? Chinese told French to Japanese people. Can you imagine?
Your native
in Japanese.
And your native
Explain
language
the grammar
is
in
Mandarin.
Japanese. I mean, totally.
And your native language is Mandarin.
Mandarin, yes. So
That's
it
amazing.
was an amazing story. I didn't like. I even don't know what I did at that time. I just didn't need it. So then we went to Hong Kong. So I became also a journalist for a Chinese magazine.
Oh, you became a
for
journalist
some-
as well then?
Yeah. So I did some freelance journals in Japan too for French radio. So I moved to Hong Kong. I continued as journalist. So then we we broke up. So afterwards, I stayed in Hong Kong for 1 year. Then I said there's no reason for me to stay in Hong Kong. Then I find through my career interview. Once I did an interview with Airbus head of China, who's British guy. So he was very impressed by my interviews. So I was hired as the head of communication for Airbus in China. So that was a big job to open Chinese market for European.
Did you enjoy that job?
Yes, it's a huge job.
I can see the twinkle
Yes.
in your eye when you
It
mentioned
was
that.
Yeah, it was a big job. It was a big job. I stayed there for 5 years until I met my husband, my American husband, in Paris. And then I had to make
You
a
met in
decision.
Paris?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I had to make a choice, either continue my job or marry him to move to the United States. So my boss said, Anping, if your husband can come to Beijing, I'll give you $8,000 housing monthly housing allowance.
Monthly?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, $8,000 at that time, you cannot find bigger apartment than only 2-bedroom apartment.
Oh, I see.
Because there is no commercial apartments in Beijing at that time. It's not huge. I mean, 8,000 sounds a lot of, it's big money, but you couldn't find a huge place in that time. So, but I made the decision. I came to the United States.
All right.
So that was a big decision. So.
And how do you spend your time now?
So I work at Asia Society. So I run
Okay.
a program, which is very impactful, and I really like it because this is such important work. I take every year top American journalists, such as David Brooks, the New York Times
Okay.
columnist, Tavis Smiley from PBS to China. I pick the top American media leader who are famous in United States or very influential, but have never been in China. So that's
So you introduce them to
China.
To
Just
China.
educational purpose for them to see. Because if you're a media leader and you don't know China, how can
you report on it, right? Or how do
yes,
you know?
how can you judge your correspondence article? How can you be objective? This is absolutely the lesson they needed to take. So I'm really
Wow,
happy
that's
I'm
a
doing something.
fabulous story.
Yeah.
I'm loving
Sorry,
this.
I gave all of my personal life, not your.
It's
Yeah.
very inspiring.
Oh, it's not.
So, you're a journalist.
Yeah, I'm a journalist.
Let's tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, but much less inspiring.
I'm much older, so don't.
Something we have similar when we go to the university in China at that time. When we were allocated a job,
Yeah.
we have no choice, but also good. We don't need to.
You don't need to really make the choice, right?
Yeah,
It's made
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I went to Xinhua News Agency. It's the biggest news organization in China.
Okay.
So it's good, but since almost 30 years I work for that agency, but it's good I can travel a lot and work in different bureaus of the agency. That makes my life.
You like that.
Yeah.
So you like travel, you
Yeah.
like meeting new people.
Yeah.
And you're in a position where you can do that.
Yeah.
Great. Fabulous. Do you see yourself staying there for the rest of your career?
But after learning this story from you, I'm thinking to become expertise in some area.
You
and
are.
moving forward.
It's a big world out there, and there are a lot of really cool things to do. And I'm looking at a room full of really talented people who are looking to improve themselves, to see what else is out there. It is a really wonderful world, and if you start to explore it, develop your curiosity and start asking questions, if you noticed the questions that I asked, most of what I said, most of it were questions. And look at what we've learned about each other. So I encourage you to continue to go on, and I think we have a little bit of time for networking. If you've heard anybody in this room, I'm sorry we didn't get to all of you, but talk to each other. And it's really nice to be able to share with you, and I thank you for being so courageous and sharing some really personal stuff. So thank you very much, and I'm so glad. My gratitude thought for today is that I was able to get out of snowbound New Jersey and come here and share conversation with you. So thank you.